All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Yesterday, we threw out a list of, some names, underrated names to keep an eye out for the Reds this upcoming season, names that are going to play a pivotal role in them accomplishing their goals of winning the division, making the playoffs, and obviously, having a successful 2025 campaign. We talked so much about Ellie De La Cruz. We talked so much about Matt McClain and Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, and the bigger names, but they can all do what they're supposed to, but if the rest of the guys around them don't fulfill their end of the bargain, this team's going nowhere fast. So we threw out a lot of names yesterday, TJ Friedel and some others. Obviously, Espinal's name was thrown out there. One name was not on the list, and we were having an interesting conversation during the break about this, that's not on the list that Charlie Goldsmith was speaking very highly of and kind of putting in that underrated category, was that of a Nick Martinez. Now, Charlie Goldsmith, reading the article that he had about, Nick Martinez, he goes on to say last year Martinez ranked 16th in all of baseball in pitching WAR, slotting in ahead of Logan, Webb, and Aaron Nola. Martinez was elite at limited hard contact, limiting walks, and a generating swing and miss. Even though Martinez did spend half of the season in the bullpen, he's still ranked 80th in Major League Baseball in innings pitched. Only 11 pitchers in baseball last year threw more innings than he did, and also had a better ERA. So he goes on to talk about the fact that obviously when we talk about some of the biggest names in baseball, best pitchers in baseball, Martinez's numbers are right up there with them. He will never be looked at as a guy to be in the Cy Young conversation, but his numbers were as good as a lot of guys who were in the Cy Young conversation a year ago. So I know you guys said you don't really put him in that overrated or in that underrated category, but when you do look at it from that perspective, when I came across this article, it kind of changed my thinking on him just a little bit. Are we underappreciating just how good his numbers were last year? And what is it about him that just doesn't truly grab you to get you to buy in? Because his numbers are very, very good. Only select few pitchers had better numbers than he did last year, but he didn't get any attention or love when it came to the Cy Young conversation.
I don't think we're underappreciating what he did last year. We gave him a $21 million contract. I think we gave him maybe more than he deserved.
That's the best way to value someone.
Right, yeah. We gave him a qualifying offer, and he took it. So I think we certainly appreciate what he had. I don't necessarily not buy into Nick Martinez. I don't think he's a top 11 or 12 pitcher in baseball. Yeah. And if you do think that, then certainly he's underrated, one of the most underrated players in baseball, and then he should be talked about as such. But I don't quite put him in that tier. I do think he's very good. I think he's crucial to the Reds' success this year. We don't even know what role he's necessarily going to play, and I still think he's towards the top of the list of people who are crucial towards the Reds' success, but I think most people know that and talk about that. That's the reason I left him off the list yesterday, is I just don't think he's underrated. I think what he means to the Reds, I think most people know, and at least in the circles that I've seen, have been talking about quite frequently, is that Nick Martinez, being what he was last year, can propel this team pretty far this season.
He was phenomenal. He was what the Reds needed last year. He was available. He was healthy. He was consistent. He had a 3.1 ERA. The guy was. He was lights out. In the versatility of what he does, being able to go into the bullpen, go 3-4 innings out of the bullpen. He can be a starter, go 5-6 innings as a starter. There's not a lot of guys that are doing that in Major League Baseball. I think the Reds paid him $21 million because he's a unicorn in the fact that he's one of the only pitchers doing that today. He's the only one doing that. So, you can rely upon him as whatever you need him to be. That's almost a superpower in my eyes. So I'm happy that the Reds got him. Would I have traded an outfield power bat over Nick Martinez for the same price? Maybe. I don't know. I would have to see the player, but I know that's the big knock, as it were, on Nick Martinez, is that you didn't go out and get a big free agent bat. You got Nick Martinez. But Nick Martinez, though the name doesn't hold as much power as some of the big Cy Young players that Kinner was talking about, Nick Martinez does bring a small market team a semblance of consistency and solid production that I don't think that the Reds have had in quite some time.
Keep in mind, too, I think the other reason why, I think we were all impressed with what he was doing, but keep in mind the reason he was also in the rotation is because of how depleted the rest of the rotation was. They were decimated by injuries. I think the reason we didn't appreciate it as much is because the season was already flushed down the toilet. There were no great pitchers around him to really help it stand out even more. He stood out because no one else could pitch during that stretch, and he filled that void perfectly. But the thing is, one thing I haven't thought about, like imagine like Hunter Greene's going to pick up where he left off last year. If Nick Lodolo stays healthy and he takes that next step forward, I think if Martinez is picking up where he left off last year, all of a sudden, I think we're talking about a completely different animal when it comes to this rotation, because we talked about the importance of Brady Singer being, added to this rotation. Abbott or Rhett Lauder, obviously being healthy is going to be key. But with the numbers he was putting up as a starter last year, I don't think they got appreciated enough because the situation of the season, the rotation being as banged up as it was. But if he's doing that, following great starts from a Nick Lodolo and a Hunter Greene, I think he's going to be viewed at in a completely different light. Now, he's 34 years old. All right. He signed a 2-year deal with the Reds coming into last year. He had the option to leave. Obviously, he accepted the qualifying offer, and he bet on himself. Reading this article, it talked about, he's been very big on, short-term contracts. So he has more control, of where he goes and how long he's there and the money that he makes and everything along those lines. But I do think that is something to keep an eye on. If he picks up where he left off and his numbers are contributing towards a winner, I think that's when he'll also be looked at in a completely different light as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I think that's the case with a lot of guys on the Reds. If this team starts winning a little bit, we'll see a lot more respect for them league-wide. And I think that's something that we saw play out pretty clearly for us in the NFL season this year in this city. We saw guys who, finished below where we thought they should finish on league-wide awards because the team didn't win enough games. And honestly, it felt the same way last year with where Hunter Greene finished in the Cy Young and where Ellie finished in the MVP for the Reds with not winning enough games to really be viewed where your numbers say you should be viewed in that conversation. So hopefully this team can pick up, a lot more wins this year, be in the mix for the playoffs, be competitive, and try to win the division, because then it's not just Nick Martinez, but everyone on this team, all the young guys on this team will get the respect they deserve, and the Reds as a whole will get the respect they deserve. And I think there can be a spotlight shined on this city because of how great some of the players we have are. And if we just start winning a couple games, start hot, I think this team can be really, really exciting. And Nick Martinez is absolutely part of that.
100% he is.
As far as Hunter Greene is concerned, another update from Charlie from yesterday. A note he made here is that the starting pitchers for the Cactus League opener usually historically have been guys who are trying to make the team. Hunter Greene is by no means trying to make the team, but he will be starting for the Reds coming up this weekend in their Cactus League debut. And the reason that's interesting, Hunter Greene goes on to say, I feel great. I feel like I've been able to add more strength to my body. I slimmed down, which will help throughout the season. It also is a good indication, too, of just how aggressive this team's ready to be right away. I mean, the fact that Hunter Greene is on the bat, last year we were debating, Hunter Greene, should he be the opening day starter? Obviously, this isn't as big of a deal as opening day starter, but, it is interesting. Right out the gate, we're not easing into it. Hunter Greene, you're our guy. Get out there, set the tone. Let's go. I think that's pretty cool that they're setting the tone with Hunter Greene right off the bat, debuting in the Cactus League on Saturday.
First positive for Terry Francona over David Bell, making the easy decisions.
Yep.
Make your ace, superstar, Cy Young candidate pitcher your opening starter. I know we're not to opening day yet, but I'd be shocked if someone else is starting on opening day. So I think Terry Francona, great job. David Bell screwed it up last year. Glad you got it right.
Hunter Greene was a 6-WAR player last year. He was phenomenal. Anybody who had any doubts about what this guy was, in the 2 years prior, I think we were all proven wrong. For those of you who said, maybe we'll ship him out to the bullpen and we'll have him be the closer, which I have no doubt he could be a great closer, but he's a starting pitcher. He threw 150 innings. He was 9-5, not that win-loss matters at all, and his strikeout rate's unheard of. So Hunter Greene is the bona fide borderline best pitcher on the squad, and I don't think it's remotely close. I would say borderline best player on the team, just because I think Ellie and him are pretty similar.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, Hunter Greene, his health is important. He was in 26 games last year, but the 26 games, like he had 24 games in 2022, 22 and 23. I think the difference with those, he wasn't going as far as we thought he could. There were some injury stuff that was like, all right, maybe he's not completely healthy. It never felt like last year he was dealing with a ton of injuries up until the end of the season. So to see Hunter Greene back and ready and to be our bona fide ace this year, I'm very, very excited for it. And I think, again, he's going to have a Cy Young caliber year. I do. I think he's one of the best pitchers in the National League. I think he's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. Not a lot of guys have a pitcher like this for the contract that we have Hunter Greene for. for.
And a lot of the guys that are cemented above him in those rankings are older and established, and you know what you're going to get. And I'm not necessarily saying Hunter is going to be the best pitcher in the world, but there is still so much space for him to grow with how good he already is. I don't know where he could end up. He's one of those guys that certainly falls in the Ellie De La Cruz category of we have superstars in Cincinnati, and who knows how good this team could get if you just fix everything else.
I think last week or the week before, Brad Meader, the general manager for the Reds, said, when it comes to superstars in Cincinnati, they're never going to go out and buy a superstar. They're never going to go out and acquire a superstar in free agency or through a trade. Their superstars are all going to come from within, and that they're hoping that that's the case a lot of times moving forward. We keep calling Ellie a generational type talent. I don't know if Hunter Greene's a generational type talent, but he is a unicorn type talent when it comes to the Reds, because it's very rare that the Reds do bring up a talent like this. Usually you get your Joey Votto and then a bunch of really good players coming up through the system around him. You got Ellie and Hunter Greene that were coming up together. Nick Lodolo could be a huge star. Like, they've hit on a lot of these guys. They have to continue down that progression, of course. But man, oh man, to have Hunter and Ellie together to come up at the same time the way they have, I don't think they get enough credit for that, which stems back to what we talked about earlier in the week, the job that the front office has done technically from that perspective. It is pretty wild, the talent that has come up pretty much all at the same time over the last 2 years.
It's the only chance you have to try to compete if you're a team like the Reds. And it's really hard to do, because when you get a lot of great players, a lot of times they're not on the same timeline. And the fact that we have it and they're all up and they all seem to be, or most of them seem to be, legitimate, future stars in the game of baseball, that's incredibly exciting. And that puts the Reds in a spot that we haven't been in a long time. There was one more nugget before the first day of Red Spring Training that I thought was really interesting from Charlie Goldsmith as well. Just a great quote that continues to, let everyone in Cincinnati know how much we should love Terry Francona and how much he loves us. Charlie Goldsmith said that the Reds start their spring training with a split squad game, one versus Cleveland and one versus Milwaukee. Terry Francona, Brad Mills, and Chris Valleca will be at the Brewers game. Freddie Benavides will manage the home game with the number one squad. And Francona said that that's because he doesn't want the spring training opener to be a hug fest where the focus is on him seeing former players and friends in Cleveland. This is the quote: "I want these guys to know how important they are, how much they mean to me. I'm a Red. We need these guys to know we're invested in what we're doing here." Terry Francona is completely bought in, loves this team, and he's ready to go for this season. I thought that was cool that he's solely focused on Cincinnati and wants to make sure that this Reds team is at the top of his mind as we get closer to the season.
I think it's what separates him from other managers that you get out there. And, no disrespect to the Skip Schumachers of the world, but I don't think they make an impact like Terry Francona does. I don't think it's remotely close. I think there's about probably 20 managers in Major League Baseball that are in the Skip Schumacher camp, which I think are, I'm not going to call them worthless. I'm not going to say that because they have worth. They're good managers out there. I'm just saying there's clearly a top echelon level caliber of managers. We have one of those, right? And I'm very, very happy about that. And hopefully he changes the culture of the Cincinnati Reds back to a little bit of what Dusty Baker brought here in Cincinnati. I think that winning culture, that that old school style baseball, that's what I want in Cincinnati, and that's what we've been missing since 2013, right? And we've not had a lot of success since that. 4 playoff appearances, only one of them by David Bell, right? And asterisk, so it was a COVID year, so I don't even count it.
Didn't score a run. So.
Didn't score a run. It's like this is the guy we want leading our franchise. This is the guy we want to be the face of our franchise. So I'm hoping Terry Francona is going to be good this year, because boy, it's going to be frustrating if the Reds start losing games.